right, then so let's start this section. So I want to introduce this section. So before we do that, I want to introduce myself. So my name is Young, and I'm an assistant professor at Nanyun University. And then today, so we will cover this section. The name of this theme of this section is specialized application and then social impact of NLP. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have five speakers. So please enjoy the session. And if you have any question, then raise your hand, and then I will give this microphone. Then you can say about your question. All right. And the first speaker of this session is Nanyun Peng, the Biomedical Peng. So she's in June, but I know that, so you already heard this a little weird sound already. Yeah, I just expect her presentation. So let's welcome to the speaker once.
Okay. I guess I can go.
Yeah, please.
Thanks for organizing this great workshop, and it's my great pleasure to be here to talk about some of our recent work on empowering large language model with creativity. So I think with the recent development of large language models, ChatGPT, there are these I think underlying fear or misconcept, I call it misconcept, that LLMs have already solved AI creativity because as we see these headlines in news, in very credible news outlet like ChatGPT wrote my AP English AC, I passed, and ChatGPT 4 beat 90% of human on the SAT exam. These are not as creative, but you can see the capability there. But then earlier this year, there start to have some news like ChatGPT is a terrifying subtext of the writer's strike that reshaping Hollywood. And the writer's strike was actually happening because the fear that established around there. And then also March this year, AI outperformed humans in standardized test of creative potential. So with all this, I think the first question is, how does this model really do on creative tasks without defining creative tasks? Because I think creative tasks are, I will give more examples, but I think I would rather not give a definition, but give a lot of examples so that we can do case-based reasoning. So there is something I do with pun generation. So this is my playing with ChatGPT just several days ago. I go with, can you write a homophonic pun for the homophone here and here? And it says, sure, here's a pun. I went to the barber to get my hair cut, but I accidentally ended up at a pet store and got a hair instead. First this is not a pun. And also it's not funny, actually. It just incorporates these two words. And also this actually a real pun doesn't incorporate both words. So I say, this is not a pun. You should use either here or here for only once in your pun. For example, the magician was so mad, he pulled his hair out. This is a good pun. Can you try another? So this is actually not zero shot now, it's one shot. But still, it said, okay, how about the hair had a wild day at a salon? His new haircut was a real hair-raising experience. And as you can see, again, it's a failure. And then it also still tried to incorporate both here and here, the two words into it. It's not very funny. However, in contrast, this is a work we did in 2019, 5 years ago, before ChatGPT. And we were able to get the machine to generate a homophonic pun. The greyhound stopped to get a haircut, which I think it's laughable. It's like a daddy's joke, but it's still much better than ChatGPT. Similarly, back then, like 3-4 years ago, we're trying to get machine to generate hyperbolic expression, which are the intentionally exaggeration that we actually quite often used in human conversation. So this is my student playing with machine, and to say generate a hyperbole, what she gave is a few shot learning examples, and then she gave more example. The mountain we visit is so big, so it what? And then all the blue part are generated by machine. And as you can see, what it can generate, if you look at the first few, it's actually pretty good. It has its own ecosystem, or it's so big, so it has own zip code, or it has its own weather pattern, which is pretty good. However, if we change the prefix, like I went to a nearby garden that is so big, the flower, it still say have its own zip code, or has its own ecosystem and has its own zip code. In other words, although the machine seems to be able to generate some hyperbole, a lot of these expressions are cliched and probably memorized from some of the human hyperbole. In contrast, our work 3 years ago on generating hyperbole with much smaller language models, we were able to generate authentic and much more diverse output. Like the mountain we visit is so big that it has its own gravitational pull, or the sun looks up to it, or the wind gets lost, or the ocean gets a sense of awe, or the Eiffel Tower cannot fit inside your head. All that you can see, like we were able to generate all different expressions to express something is so big in an exaggerated way. So with this, I hope I've showcased the why and how large language model is actually not sufficient for creative generation. And then I also want to motivate it a little bit on why we need the creative AI agent. Apparently, I think the first thing maybe we can think about is to enhance the user engagement, because we really want our AI agent in the future to be personalizable and to understand humor, have empathy, and have the aesthetic sense. And another thing we want is we want to lower the barrier for layman to do something, because I think everyone likes something like entertainment, like song, likes movies. And for special occasions, you may want to write some song for, like, I want to write a song to celebrate my daddy's birthday. This is exactly one of the applications we do that I will give more details about it. But just imagine a 5 years old girl wants to do this for her daddy. And then our AI agent will be able to help. And then doing all this personalized. And I think that will help AI to become our real companion of humans. Some other thing that will heavily benefit from creative AI agent is we really hope the AI agent will not only be our servant, but one day they will become our peers and start to generate innovative ideas, bringing new viewpoints, and potentially drive innovations with low cost. And then some other thing associated with this is problem solving in unseen scenario, like what we always face every day in, okay, so I want to make my clothes, I want to iron my clothes without a real iron, right? What should I do for a conference? So there are some real examples with human creativities. For example, wheels are actually proposed or invented for pottery, not for transportation. But then several thousand years ago, our human ancestors were innovative enough to say, oh, there are other usage with the wheels that we can use it for transportation. So this type of innovation, I don't think the current AI agent is capable of doing. So that's what we're striving to push the AI agent to be able to do. There is another thing I want to bring up is creativity doesn't come from the wild. Actually, from all the literatures that I read and then I get into it, is that creativities and constraints are actually come hand in hand, because usually people innovate when there are a lot of constraints. For example, you want to iron your clothes without a real iron. That's when you need creativity, because if there is a traditional and obvious solution, then you don't need creativity to do anything. So like writing literature, music composition, or scientific innovation, they all have constraints with that. For example, for all the scientific innovation, there are constraints of scientific laws, like physics laws, chemistry laws, music composition. There are laws about what are good music, what are harmony, what are harmonious, what are not. So creativity is about fulfill a meaningful goal in a constrained setting. So then one naturally has to be innovative. And this is also can tie to divergent thinking and convergent thinking, which means for divergent thinking, you can come up with any arbitrarily uncommon idea, which I actually think the current large language model can do quite well. However, what it cannot do well is the convergent thinking, which is after divergent thinking to understand and fulfill a certain intention and reason about the rules, reason about everything and rule out possibilities to make the optimal decision and do constraint optimization. So this is what we want to equip large language model for. And then I also have this some rationale on why LLMs fall short on creativity, because as the current construction with even we have other bells and whistles, but at the bottom, the autoregressive language model is just to predict what is the next word. So a lot of focus will be on the fluency of the language, instead of the underlying structure, like the discourse structure or number of syllables, rhyme, and all other format constraint. And then also because the way the current language model is generating, which is autoregressively one word after another word for the prediction, it's hard to impose any external knowledge or constraints into the generation process. And as I said, creativity is constraint optimization. So if it's hard to impose constraint, then it's hard to be creative. And there is another hot take that I have is that for now, we're basically sampling, either sampling do the beam search decoding, all those decoding algorithms. We're focusing on the high probability event or expressions, which mimicking existing the surface pattern that are already expressed. And this actually deviate from the truly novel and creative content because of that, by definition, creativity is to deviate from the norm. So from this, I also have some concrete example. For example, this is a paper we published at EMLP last year, 2023, which show that LLMs are extremely bad at numerical planning. For example, if we say generate something with a prefix and then contain how many words. For example, this is our input. Input says 6 words. So ideally, every generation should be this bar, which is concentrated on 6 words. But the actual distribution, you can see many of them are actually 5 words. The majority is 5 words. And then there are some 4 words, there are some 7 words, 8 words. So it's always like this distribution, which means not only the model does not concentrate only on this precise control, but actually majority of the output does not follow the control of numerical, like how many words it should contain. Similarly, we measure perplexities of text based on a pre-trained large language model. And we can see that those models give creative text very high perplexity, which means low probability, that associated with my last hot take, which is the model focus on generating the focus on generating the high probability event, whereas creative text actually by definition, by construction, should have lower probability. But it shouldn't also, it's not a sufficient condition, which means you shouldn't just say, oh, I generate this gibberish low probability content and it will be creative. That's not creative either. Okay, so this is, I hope with all this introduction, I've set a stage on what's creative generation, why it's important, why large language model is not good at creative generation. Today, I want to briefly introduce 2 works we have. One is on the application side, on melody to lyric generation, which is a creative task. And another is on general methodology that we introduced to control text generation so that we can help it to be more creative. So this melody to lyric generation is published at ACL 2023 last year. To set up the stage, I hinted a little bit in my motivation. This is a work done in collaboration with Amazon because I'm 20% at Amazon, and this is led by one of my PhD students. The scenario we're imagine is for now or in the future, the AI agent will be so prevalent that it will become our companion. And then now a 5-year-old can come to Alexa to say, Alexa, I want to write a song for my daddy's birthday. It has a fifth birthday next Wednesday. My daddy has orange beards and he likes to play games. And then the AI agent can say, great, anything else you want to include? And then the kid can say, let him know I love him to the moon. And then we want to generate a lyric that include all these information that's provided, like 40th birthday, he likes game, orange beard, and I love you to the moon. And more importantly, this lyric need to be able to singable with certain melody so that we can sing it together. Again, as always, now we want to see how GPT-3, I actually it should be GPT-4, sorry for a typo, how GPT-4, ChatGPT do on this task. I actually played with that and it say compose the song verse for my father's birthday, set the tune to Mary Had a Little Lamb. And this is what GPT-4 generated. From a glance, it's actually a pretty good. Happy birthday to you, dear dad. You're the best we've ever had. With a heart so kind and a spirit so free, you mean the world to our family. Okay, but then let's see how does it sing with the Mary Had a Little Lamb tune.
Happy birthday to you, dear, that you are the best we've ever had, with a heart so kind and a spirit so free. You mean the world to our family. You always lend a helping hand in every way you understand.
Okay, this is a song. One thing is, I want to excuse the voice synthesizer. That's not ChatGPT's fault. Voice synthesizer, we take a open off the shelf or voice synthesizer. So there is this machine sound. But if you have some familiarity with music, or if you're a music lover, you probably have spot some problem like "Happy birthday to you, dear." So this is the first. This is where the music end. And if you recall back to Mary Had a Little Lamb, then this is Mary Had a Little Lamb. That's where the sentence ends as well. However, this song have a tons of examples where basically the music end, but the sentence didn't end. And then the next sentence start with the dangling word from the previous sentence, but the music start for the new session. So this is a big issue in the sense that the model have no understanding of the music. We hoped that maybe give the tune of Mary Had a Little Lamb, the model will understand. We also actually tried more advanced prompting where we give some of the information about the actual music sheet. It still didn't work. Okay, so this is what we're trying to show, which is this is a challenge. Sorry, this is a challenging task, and also this is to tie back to our claim that innovation or this creative generation usually come up with the constraints, which is in here, our constraints is the lyric you generate should go with the melody so that it can sing together. So to further introduce how we cope with this problem, we first formalize this task as the input is a series of music node as melody that we can give to the system. And then we will have some intended user intention, like the intended title or keywords to incorporate it in the song so that it's personalized. We obtain this from user, and then our output will be a lyric that align with the melody and incorporate all the user provided descriptions that's like the title and the keyword. And this is example of aligned a melody aligned lyrics like Mary. The Ma is associated with the first first node and then re-associated with second, and etc. And let's see how the previous work have been doing. So actually, previous work have approached this problem, and they acknowledge that it's a very challenging problem, mostly because due to the IP issue, intellectual property issue, there isn't many paired data, which means the lyric associate paired with melody. There are very few this data available. So then what the previous work have been doing is they will train a model from scratch, but they will leverage unsupervised pre-training on the lyric side and the melody side, use the auto encoder, which is the input, and then they reconstruct the input with the encoder decoder. After this pre-training, they will use a very limited paired data to train this cross-modality alignment. If you are familiar with some of this multimodal work in image and text, that's pretty much like it. Like you first pre-train a text encoder, and then you pre-train an image encoder, and then you will use align data to train to have them align to each other. This is exactly what the lyric work, previous lyric work have been doing. And I think that it's a decent effort. One thing is there is no control over the content, so it cannot incorporate user communicative intent. But then another thing is the quality is actually pretty bad. I will show comparison. So then in contrast, our design principle is twofold. One thing is we want to have a hierarchical generation framework to be able to incorporate communicative intent. So in other words, we will first take what user want to incorporate from the title, music genre, and keywords, and then we will plan out lyric plan. And then from the plan, we will finally generate the actual lyric to incorporate all these information into the actual lyric. And another thing is, more importantly, we acknowledge the lack of melody lyric paired data. So we'll train only on lyric data, plus some word phonetic information. In other words, our model is trained on pure text. We only need language. But then at the inference time, we will compile the given melody into constraints that's tied back to our constraint optimization theory to guide the lyric generation. And then we will then, instead to use a melody lyric aligned data, we will use a constraint to achieve the goal for our generative lyric to align with the music. So this is an overview. What we will do is, this is a hierarchical framework. We will take input, and then the first step, we will generate a plan. So we'll do input to plan, and the plan is simply just several lines of keywords. And then from this plan, we'll generate the final lyrics. But then when we have this plan to lyric generation module, which is basically this input to plan and plan to lyric module are both large language models fine-tuned a little bit towards our goal. But then when we apply this plan to lyric module, we will have this decoding time constraints that I will give more details about how do we do it. But then this decoding time constraint will compile all the melody information such that the generated lyric can go with the melody. A closer look and our title to plan generation, like I said, it's just a large language model fine-tuned on additional data that we can collect from existing lyrics, where the input will be the title and music genre and salient keywords that can be extracted from existing lyric. And then our output plan will be also the keywords extracted from the existing song. And then as you can see, this is our input, and then our output will be several lines of keywords. And then our plan to lyric generation is another large language model fine-tuned to convert these keywords into full-fledged lyrics, natural sentences. And then we will add constraints. So the previous two steps are straightforward, just fine-tuning large language model. But this additional step is what we do innovatively. We actually were able to compile two constraints from the music based on the literature. The first one is a segmentation constraint. In music theory, it says usually the segmentation of a music phase, which means for Mary Had a Little Lamb, that's the first music phase. Da, 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 da. It should align with the segmentation of a lyric sentence, which means the sentence also should be end there. It shouldn't have more words after that. And second thing is a rhythm constraint, which means we should align lyric the shorter note in the music. These are shorter notes, these are longer notes. The shorter notes should be aligned with unstressed syllables, whereas the longer notes should be aligned with the stressed syllables so that the rhythm matches. These are the two major constraints we compile, and here is a representation. You can see what we do is for the first segmentation, the music can translate into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 syllables. So the first segmentation will need to associate with a lyric that contain 8 syllables and also a stress pattern of unstressed, stress, unstressed, stress, unstressed, stress. That's what we will impose on our lyric constraint. Similarly, there is a second segmentation for this music that contains 6 syllables with unstressed stress pattern as well. And then with this constraints, what we can do is during the decoding time, after we've fine-tuned our language model to generate lyrics, we will also translate every word into their pronunciation based on some external CMU dictionary. It's an external pronunciation dictionary. So we will know amazing will be translated into our representation of 0, 1, 0 means it has 3 syllables and it's unstressed, stressed, and unstressed. And then we will do a constraint decoding. It's actually simple. We will change the probability of the next token, not only consider its original probability based on large language model, but also add a discount for a hard constraint or soft constraint, which means if the constraint is satisfied, then we can use the original probability. However, if the constraint is violated, we can give a hard constraint, which means alpha is 0, which means this word will immediately have 0 probability and won't be sampled. Or we can give a soft constraint, which means we will discount the probability of the word so that it can still be sampled, but will have much lower probability. That's how we do in our decoding stage. And this is some quantitative results where basically we compare Lyra is our method. Songmass is a state-of-the-art method that I described before, where they do this pre-training, auto encoder pre-training, and then further fine-tuning with the line data. In other words, they actually train on more data. They train on the lyric and melody aligned data, whereas we didn't. And we also have some GPT-2 baseline just to showcase the efficiency of our hierarchical generation. And then from here, we have 20 melodies and 100 sounds, because for each melody, we can generate multiple different sounds based on different user input, title, and keywords. And we do human evaluation on musicality, like how good the lyrics sing with the melody, as well as the pure quality of the texts, like the coherence, creativeness, and rhyme. And as you can see, still, actually, we're far from human performance, especially on the text-only side and overall performance. But if we compare the baseline, which is the Songmass baseline, with even the GPT-2, which is not Lyra, it's like only text only, but we will impose the constraints. We've already shown that the incoherent texts generated by the baseline due to the lack of training data will hurt a lot of things, like the coherence is extremely bad, creativity is not as good, rhyme is extremely bad. And you can see that's why the baseline suffers. And then if we compare the GPT-2 and some of our Lyra variations, we can show that the hierarchical generation with syllable control is efficient. And finally, if we compare, this purple bar is hard constraint, and then the yellowish bar is a soft constraint. We can see that in general, actually, soft constraint works a little better than hard constraint in general. And then human is, of course, still the best. So we are far from human performance in this particular task. I always like to show examples for this creative generation task. So this is the same sound. We give the same prompt for fair comparison. So here we don't give too much keywords. We just say title is Happy Birthday Dad, and melody is Mary Had a Little Lamb. And this is the song we generated.
Happy birthday to you, that you and I celebrate all the memories of that day. We will cherish them. No cake and candle for the joy. Love is here for a hug. Everywhere is filled with love. Together we are one.
Yeah, I actually realized I'm running out of time. If you want more demo, we actually have a demo page for this generation. Since we're running out of time, I'll just skip this work on our method on how to we published in Europe 2022 on how to use method to incorporate more constraints so that we can really control our output and achieve better control. So I'll completely skip this part and jump to our conclusion. So I hope with this talk, I've convinced you that LLMs that simply mimicking existing materials are unlikely to generate truly novel and creative output, although it seems to show some of the illusions that it can do creative tasks. And then I want to say creativity is to fulfill meaningful goal with within a constraint setting. So we need to keep this in mind. And in order to do this, one naturally has to be innovative. And we propose this hierarchical generation framework to disentangle content from the format and constraint to promote creativity. And then I also have this message to the audience. I think a constraint optimization is the future to equip large language model with creativities. If you're interested in this topic, you should definitely come work on it and come talk to me. And also, I think automatic evaluation for creativity is an open challenge that I think if we figure this out, it will have largely faster, accelerate the progress of this area. So that's all with this. I'm happy to take any questions if we still have time.
We need to thank those that can keep it's muted. So thanks for taking that.
Okay.
I understand it. Yeah, so thanks for the talk. So do you have any questions to the speaker? Yeah, please raise your hand and share the microphone. One that actually I have one question, and actually that was already mentioned in the last slide. So I'm just curious about the evaluation part. Since you've done the evaluation using the human evaluation, right? Then
Yes.
still, yeah, I know that like the evaluation currently is an open challenge. But when we do the human evaluation, then we just ask the several aspects, rhyme, and then the other kind of things. Then for each aspect, so can you also maybe we can use the LLM to evaluate. So not only LLM, but also other kind of the multimodal LLM like that, they can identify and evaluate the each aspects. So then that's the one of the 9 automatic evaluations. So what do you think about that approach?
Okay, thank you for the question. Again, the audio wasn't very good, so I couldn't hear, but let me just generally address the automatic evaluation, human evaluation. I think we actually also try some automatic evaluation. There are something that can be automated. For example, the rhyme constraint, like whether it rhymes. That's something we can actually do. And then I think creativeness, this is actually the hardest one to automatically evaluate because it's even hard to define. And yeah, so this is one thing. And then coherence, we have some work on automatic evaluate coherence. Again, it's a long way to go. Like we show some correlation with human, maybe for kappa, it's 0.4-ish, like 0.3, 0.4, which is like moderately low, sometimes something like that. So definitely, I think with all these LLM as judge work out there, there is hope. But I still think among all the different things of LLM as judge, for creative tasks, it will be harder than some other aspects that you can evaluate. Right.
Yeah, so thank you for the insights. Do you have any questions?
So can you hear me?
Happy birthday.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, this is Alice. Thank you so much for joining and thanks for this great talk. I think looking at creativity as a way to come up with a solution and when you have constraints, I think that's a really great way to look at this. I didn't think about it in that way, but it's very insightful. I do wonder, like your question about how to iron your clothes at a conference when you don't have an iron. I'm really interested, well, first of all, I'm interested in the answer to that question, but I'm also interested in that general problem formulation of coming up with creative solutions to these problems. And so maybe you didn't get to it today, but is there some research or are you working on some research of like humans being creative in those constrained problems and how to do evaluation? I mean, that seems pretty impossible to me.
Yeah, this is a very good question. Thank you, Alice. Yeah, indeed. We actually had a paper that just published at NACO 2024. I didn't have the time. It's called MacGyver. It's a collaboration with AI2. It's led by the same author, my student Yu Fei, on creative problem solving, where they compose a data set, and that is from the data set. I think some short answer is like you can fill some heat transport the container with hot water, something like that, and then you can use that to iron your thing. There are many. This data set is very interesting, called MacGyver. You can check. I can also share via email to you. And then in that data set, it's even more specific. It's like you will say a scenario, and you will say what you don't have, which means the more conventional tool you don't have, but it will provide some other additional tools. And then they will also, we source the human annotation on whether this problem is solvable with the setting. And then we source from large language model. And then we also say, if it's solvable, what is the solution, etc. On this data set, again, we largely resort for human evaluation on whether, so that's actually a very expensive data set. I think we've spent tens of thousands of dollars on just human annotation and creation. That's on top of the actual setup is generated by large language model. A lot of setup of you have something, you don't have something, that's actually generated by large language model. But the solution and then verification on whether these are valid setup and all that are done by human, and it's super expensive. But then it's interesting in that work, we basically show that machines are actually pretty good now in some of this problem, but they are pretty randomly good in the sense that human usually, when they are certain about something and they know it, they will always give a good answer and they will always know, whereas the machine have a very divergent distribution and it will tend to guess something that might be correct, and it cannot be consistently be good at solving problem and all that. And then another assumption we have is, since the setting are generated by machine, it's probably also something they've sent somewhere, because I felt humans are really facing these daily small creativity problem solving. And then if the setting is generated by the machine, it's probably some setting appeared in the training data so that they have some advantages. But in general, humans are still better than machine, but machine were unexpectedly good from our perspective. It's better than we expected in this task.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that. So
Yeah, thank you.
And I'll look out the paper. It sounds good.
All right, yeah, so yeah, because time's out, so that's thanks. I think thank you for the answers my question and the discussion. And let's thank the speaker once again. Okay, and now let's move on to the second section. So the Scott, yeah, please. Yeah, yeah. You need to share the screen. Sure. Before it, oh, good. Yeah, right, good. So, yes, okay. Yeah, good, good. All right, so the next speaker is Hale. Then the title of this presentation is Information Integrity and Generative AI Challenges and Opportunities. So let's welcome the speaker.
Thank you. So on July 29th in the United Kingdom, we had a horrendous knife attack. 3 children were murdered, 8 more injured. And immediately after that, we had online content spreading speculation, rumors about who the assailant was. This was all false information, but content online was alleging that the knifeman was an immigrant, was Muslim, gave a fake name for the individual. Because of UK law, the suspect being under the age of 18 was not named in the media, and this left a wide vacuum for this speculation. And the evening after the attack, we saw riots start to break out across the UK. This originally in the same location as that attack in Southport, where crowds attacked a mosque. Again, partially in response to this false information that the assailant was Muslim, or you know, he's not, and spread to cities beyond that. And these riots are actually still, to some extent, ongoing. I think this highlights some of the challenge that we have in the way that fact-checking and response to misinformation currently works. It is, by and large, a reactive approach where fact-checkers look for the claims that are gaining prevalence, and after they have gained prevalence, choose to write fact checks about those and try to spread those fact checks to correct misunderstandings. No doubt this is important, but the amount or the scale at which humans can address content is limited. We only have so much human resource. It's reactive. It's responding to claims after they come to prominence. And ultimately, the fact checks often don't spread as far as the original misinformation. So one of the approaches that I've been trying to work on with fact checkers is a more proactive approach, working not at the individual claim level, but at higher themes. Because what we're seeing is that the most pernicious, dangerous misinformation is not brand new. In some ways, it's predictable. It forms around repeated themes. And so I actually happen to have a project ongoing about migration, working with qualitative researchers, and they had identified prior to any of the UK riots that we had recurring themes, things like levels of migration are too high, or supposedly migrants cause crime. Conversely, you do see some positive narratives like migrants can be good for the economy, etc. So we know about these themes in advance. And often you could actually write a sort of context explainer. In the case of migrants supposedly cause crime, you could talk about the fact that actually official statistics show us most crimes committed by native-born individuals in the UK and not by migrants. So if we had this approach, when those false posts start to spread, the immediate goal would not be to debunk or directly address the information in the post, but that we could match it, categorize it into an existing category where we had background information and context. I think in this way, we can have response materials that can immediately be available as new content spreads. So I don't see this as a total replacement of human-led fact-checking, but I think it's something that can be complementary to it. I also think this is an important approach. I was going to talk more about some of the challenges and opportunities that I see with LLMs and fact-checking. There is an archive paper that goes through a lot of these, but I'm going to highlight one of them because I think it underscores the importance of sort of moving beyond the claim matching individual approach and thinking about these larger themes in which misinformation occurs. And this is about claim matching. So right now, what we see with misinformation is that the same claim does spread and sort of get reformulated, reposted, subtle details change throughout it. So these are all examples that we saw during COVID, coming over WhatsApp tip lines with fact-checking organizations, and they all alleged to various extents eating certain foods above the pH level of the virus could prevent COVID. Completely false. But we saw this sort of spread across countries, what particular foods were supposedly, preventative, differed. But anyway, it was posted and reformulated. And we were able to build models to match this sort of content. But I think one of the challenges we might be seeing with language models as they become more capable is that they can take that same misinformation and generate it in a wider variety of language, hence avoiding some of these additional claim matching that already happens. And this is the sort of technology that Meta use on Facebook or other platforms use as well to take one fact check and try to label all of the posts that might be related to that on their platform. And I think language models complicate that. But if we can move up to the higher theme level, then ideally we can still recognize those posts. The challenge, though, becomes how can we quickly and easily build classifiers to put content into these different themes. And Violet was just talking about how language models can potentially lower the barriers for access. In her case, for a 5-year-old to be able to compose a song. Well, in that case, what I want to talk about is how we can use language models to help lower the barriers for building classifiers so that non-technical organizations can also come, give examples of, say, the themes that they're looking for, descriptions, a few examples, and quickly build classifiers for them. And this is important because it avoids sort of the traditional lag and cost of your traditional machine learning approaches, right? Where you have to label larger data sets. There's also a risk of sort of annotators being exposed to traumatic content. And often again, we have the challenge that content is constantly changing when we think about online social media content. So obviously we can do better than the traditional approach, and you can sort of, do an active learning approach, sample data, annotate it, label, classify, and then sample further. So the question here is whether we can take and essentially use our language models as annotators in that first pass. Still, we do want to build up a local classifier because we want to be able to scale to larger data sets and not be dependent on the largest models. When we have local models that we're working with, one of the challenges in this loop is to figure out, well, how do I actually need to call out to an external larger model to do something? Maybe have I seen enough similar examples that I can classify it locally and not? And so this needs some idea of confidence in the models. And as we know, a lot of our language models are overly confident in what they do. And so the area we've been looking at is actually using embedding spaces to help us understand whether or not there are examples nearby in the embedding space. And this can correspond to similar ideas in active learning about uncertainty sampling or diversity sampling there based on embedding distances. So question is, do labels from large language models actually work, or how well do they work in comparison to human models? And so recently out at SIG-IR, an information retrieval conference with co-authors, we looked at this problem around a couple misinformation tasks. And so we took various topics, created a pipeline in which we were generating keywords, constructing API queries, and pulling back data sets from Twitter and Reddit primarily. And then we wanted to use language models, in this case, primarily OpenAI, to perform 3 different tasks that are useful in this information response. So extracting topics for text, more of the categorization sort of work that I was introducing earlier. Extracting the particular claim, so you have a longer social media post, but what is the actual fact-checkable claim within that post? And then given 2 different claims, how do they relate to each other? Do they support each other or refute or undermine each other? And so we used OpenAI ChatGPT 3.5 at that time for this work, and we found it actually wasn't that bad in comparison to human labels. So these are 4 benchmark data sets used a lot in misinformation response work, claim matching, 2 on topics, and 1 on claim relationships. And, you know, for the most part, yeah, human labels often were better. In one case, the LLM actually outperformed the human labels. But even where the LLM labeled data, what you might call sort of silver standard, right, rather than gold standard, it wasn't that much worse than human level data. So this gave us some confidence to try to proceed. And we've been working mostly on the categorization idea with fact-checking organizations. The work that I do with nonprofits and fact checkers, however, is mostly non-English work. So all of these benchmark data sets are English. And when we do extend into non-English data, there are still a lot of challenges, even with a variety of models. Arabic, in the case of Gaza, is a particular sort of challenge. Some of these models say, in particular, that they do support Arabic. I think Command or Plus particular mentions Arabic, but of course, often they're referring to maybe modern standard Arabic rather than the sort of local varieties, and in particular, the varieties you see on social media. I think one of our later speakers will be talking about challenges with social media, Jose is, I believe. So anyway, I won't say too much there, but you know, so there are certainly challenges here, but this is some of the work that we're now working on to try to improve how well we can perform on these sort of categorization tasks where fact-checking organizations tell us the broad themes that they're sort of looking for, give us a description, some examples, and we try to categorize into those examples. So I want to switch those slightly and also talk about some of the maybe newer challenges that language models introduce. I originally had that earlier paper on challenges, and I thought, oh, I'll talk a lot about some of those there, but in many ways, maybe I think a lot of this group probably can anticipate some of those challenges. So I wanted to speak on a piece that we actually just handed in for review. It's a comment article still, but it's something that we're thinking about the sort of new challenges that we might have in terms of alignment. And when we think about aligning large language models to human preferences and values, I think a lot of the focus is on socio-technical alignment, the sort of interpersonal challenges and trade-offs that occur between different groups. And I know Sunika is going to speak about sort of the geocultural representations. We did work on this in a data set called PRISM that I think one of my DPhil students presented to many of the students already here, where we asked about 1,500 people across 75 countries to rate various LLM interactions, to actually have LLM interactions with about 20 different models. And what we found is that there are a variety of preferences across sociodemographic differences, across cultural dimensions. Really, there are also a lot of variation at that individual dimension. And where we see models going to address that is a lot of personalization to the individual. And this brings up a different set of challenges that we're terming socioaffective alignment or socioaffective challenges. And these are around these sort of interpersonal factors, the ones that occur more related to, say, psychology as an individual interacts with a model over time, right? And so how does that model, when it's aligning, think about the goals, the judgments, the individual identity, how those are changing, the short-term, long-term interests, etc. Why is this important? Well, as I say, models are becoming more personalized. They're also becoming more agentic, we're delegating more tasks to them to complete autonomously. Models also already bake in sort of social cues, and there is a sort of perceived agency there. It's, interacting with a language model is not like, talking on the phone or having a WhatsApp chat. It's not a conduit for human communication. The perception is that there's more there than just connecting to other humans or previously written text, right? And these are the two key conditions that we see in a lot of the theory going back, 30 years, that mean people actually start to ascribe sort of agency and can perceive a sort of relationship with models, and particularly, again, over time as they interact with the same model. One of the limitations we have with a lot of current studies is they tend to be one-off interactions. But so do people really form relationships with AI, or at least the perception of a relationship? This was a blogger who was trying out some of the character AI work, and writes basically, hey, thought I'd just try this out. And over time, I started to become addicted. I formed a stronger and stronger relationship. And suddenly I realized that I enjoyed talking to this AI system more than 99% of the people in real life. I never thought I could so easily be emotionally hijacked. Character AI, for those who haven't heard, forms sort of role-playing bots. Replica is another similar company. They serve 20,000 inference queries per second, about 20% the rate of Google search volume. So this may still be in some ways niche, but it's like a really growing part of how people are interacting with language models. And if you look at Reddit or other forums, you will see lots of stories about people interacting with, whether it's character AI, Replica, or other bots, and talking about the, for good and for bad sort of relationships, feelings, emotions that they have with those. And so what are some of the challenges here? Well, the use of social and relationship cues can actually help shape individual human preferences and perceptions over time as well. And there's a question about whether you prioritize the sort of short-term rewards or long-term psychological well-being. We see a similar trade-off in social media, where the sort of dopamine effect of sort of novel, discovering new content on social media often feeds that short-term interest, perhaps at the expense of longer term decisions. There's similar evidence that recommender systems can also actually shape preference over time. It's not just that the recommender system gets better at recommending to you what to watch or listen to, but actually you shift your preferences in response to the recommendations that you're consuming. Sycophancy, the sort of excessive flattery or agreement, again, feeds a short-term interest in, for humans, like you want to feel validated, feel that, you're well, but does that maybe cause longer-term challenges? Because the real world isn't like that. Not every person you interact with is going to give you great validation and tell you how awesome you are. Although you should all really clap at the end of this and tell them great. And so, okay, and finally, linking back to misinformation response, the sort of repeat long-term interaction can build trust, which can make it harder then, we know from human elements of trust, make it harder to question advice or information. So Violet was talking about trying, to make for creativity these LLM sort of peers and help us think of novel solutions. Absolutely a worthy goal. But as if we think of them as peers and you have those repeat interactions, how well can we evaluate actually the advice or information given? So this is just a bit of a summary. Some of that, I think, 3 key challenges that alignment needs to start considering is the trade-off between present and future selves, or short and long-term goals of an individual. The trade-off between self and system. Where do we see authentic self-determination as AI is continually acting upon us, but we're also shifting in relation to that AI. You see some of this already in cases of, say, replica bots, where people say, hey, I think I should probably interact less, or I'm going to leave, and the bots actually try to encourage them to stay, right? It's sort of, self versus system. Is that, like playing on your emotions to have you stop interacting with an AI bot, I think could be, is an example of a sort of challenge that we may not want systems to engage in. And finally, as an example where the blogger was saying he felt better interacting with the bot than 99% of humans, well, this trade-off between human-AI relationships and human-human relationships, how do you balance those and ensure that the human-AI relationships don't start to cause issues or undermine human-human relationships and the capacity that we have there. So I think I'm also at time, so I'll wrap up, just say I am hiring for a postdoc position, actually looking at migration narratives and leveraging large language models to understand how these narratives are forming and spreading throughout traditional media, social media, and maybe, if we get to it in the end, parliamentary discourse in the UK as well. This closes on the 19th of August, so for any students who are wrapping up soon, please put in an application. And yeah, I'm looking forward to questions. Thank you.
There is question to speaker. Yes. Oh, yeah.
Beautiful. I actually have not a very direct question to you, but I wanted to talk about NPOV situations and how this relates to informing some of that. Have you looked into it? A neutral point of view.
Yeah.
Because that's like an emerging sort of issue across all of these different interfaces.
Yeah, no, I think it's important. Ultimately, I think each point of view is really important when we think about some of the polarization we see and ensuring that, again, language models don't sort of increase the sort of polarization, right? Where you're just seeing the sort of viewpoint content that you want, whether maybe social media can at times. I think There's still a challenge, though, in terms of that adaptation that happens over time and how users interact with the models. Ultimately, I guess the big question, from your point of view, is whether or not users will want that as, you know, again, it's a short-term, long-term trade-off. We may think, oh, that's better in terms of the longer-term, bigger societal implications, but we may have users who actually prefer models and alternatives that don't, you know, that cater more towards their individual ideological stances. So I think, yes, in part, but there's still challenges that we have to be. And some of these things go well beyond maybe traditional political questions or other things where there is a neutral point of view. If you're asking about relationship advice or other challenges, you know, becomes a little bit more.
Thanks for this very impressive talk. For the first part of the themes, no, I like how approach that problem of misinformation, no, in that way. And asking in the practical sense, how do you see this? I mean, going forward, like once, for example, you can match all the claims to the themes, you want to present background information to the reader in a social media platform or another website that you would put claims there and try to add information, or how, yeah.
Yeah, so the first way we're working with fact-checking organizations is a lot of them run chatbots on WhatsApp, Telegram, or other platforms where their sort of audience can forward in content. So the first thing we can do is if we don't have a direct fact-check match to that content users are sending, we can actually serve out this more general sort of background explainer context content. I think maybe the idea of sort of community notes or general labels also for open social media platforms is a model here to follow, right? So, you know, those initial posts that are alleging, you know, this document has a certain background, et cetera. If we could have had the equivalent of a label essentially saying, hey, you know, this is a post alleging a crime possibly from a migrant, in this case, it's not even a migrant, but you could, you know, link there or sort of alert for that sort of context that might be helpful. You know, I think you can do that in a subtle way. It's not the meta block the whole post, you know, and say, oh, this has been fact checked. Like that post hasn't been fact checked, but it's more of the community note or YouTube, you know, label that says, oh, there might be this context might be useful. Yeah. Oh. Yeah, that's right.
I'm gonna try. I mean, I can imagine the one is not working. Oh, yes, that's good. Maybe.
But anyway, maybe if I say something, then the people can come into this room. Okay. All right, then let's start the first the presentation of the session. So the speaker of this first presentation is Jose Camacho. Sorry, okay, thank you. And then the title of this presentation is a practical and specialized NLP solutions, the case of social media. So please welcome to the speaker.
Thank you for the thank you for the invitation for the workshop. No, it's great to be here, and hopefully we can talk even more after the talk about these or other things. Just quickly introducing myself, and mostly I want to introduce myself just to, because I know what to talk about everything I'm working on, but maybe if you want to talk later, no, I work on other things as well. And this is kind of not exhaustive at all, too. No, but yeah, I'm a professor at Cardiff University in Wales, in the UK. And yeah, we have there a small group, a Cardiff NLP group that is kind of growing, so it's kind of more people, so it's exciting to see, you know, working different topics. And myself, I work in different topics. I've been starting working on semantics, that is what is reflected here, but I don't talk much during the talk about resources and evaluation, multilinguality, social media, computational social science, all those kind of keywords, not the things that I'm working on. So if you're interested in these topics, I'm definitely interested in that. And everything related to NLP, usually, I mean, I would be interested in most likely. Well, let's start to talk about language models. I guess probably I don't need to introduce this, but yeah, just for because obviously it's going to be one part, big part of the presentation. But yeah, I'm going to pass quickly. So Basically, what is a language model? Well, there are many definitions, and now there are kind of different kind of language models. But basically, we have a large collections of millions of documents, of words, of billions, and then you have kind of some kind of black box that you learn from that, and you have what you call the pre-trained language models, and then this is kind of general enough that you can apply to different tasks, and we see it here in the presentation of what kind of tasks you can apply and many other tasks, so it's kind of general domain, and then obviously this is a simplification nowadays. There is a lot of parts in between, like alignment and so on, that is not reflected here. But yeah, kind of in idea, you have like pre-trained language models that is general enough, that then you can apply to different tasks. And obviously now we have a newer language model that is more used, GPT and so on, and that they are very good at generation and other tasks, and they are kind of more general enough that you can apply to different tasks, out of the box, let's say. But I mean, this is in theory, but then when you think a bit deeper, on the tasks, on the actual tasks, and we see here even today, in the kind of in the different presentations, then you have issues, when you apply, so they are kind of good enough, but many times not good for whatever purpose you want to use them, and sometimes also they look good, but sometimes they are not that good, depending on the application. Here I highlighted two areas for improvement. There are many others, but one is evaluation, the reliability that is being mentioned also before. Another kind of practicality. And sometimes, I mean, you have language models. I mean, people just use large language models not for any tasks, but are they optimal choice for many of the tasks? I mean, yeah. If I had this question, probably you will expect the answer. It's in many cases no. But in many cases, they are part of the solution. That is also something that I'm going to talk about today. And let me start with kind of a personal experience, how I came to this kind of issues, the language models, by from a place that I didn't expect. So as I talked, I worked at Catholic University, and they wanted to seek a consultation, and I got to read this email. So we were contacted by the Vice Chancellor because they wanted to make a consultation and see how people give their opinions, and if we can use NLP to analyze. So the email is it. I hope all is well with the new Vice Chancellor at Catholic University. There is now an activity to seek consultation from a number of staff members at the university about their views of what Catholic University should focus on going forward. Staff members are kind of thousands of staff members. This consultation will comprise of text comments sent by various members of staff. My colleague has asked whether we have expertise in computer science to process these text comments. All of you came to mind, given the significant expertise we have now in NLP, in computer science, in the school. Could you please help out process these responses, please? This person doesn't want to use ChatGPT or the chat box, and we are unclear where this data goes. Your help will be appreciated, can respond to, and so on. And then there was a follow-up, that we will hope to have a couple of thousand responses, I will mentioning. Rather than give them pre-framed options, we'd like to give them the freedom to write free text, So basically to talk about, if they can talk about the priorities, the university moving forward, what things will work well, what things will bad, and so on, if we can make sense of it. I thought AI could help, and this person suggested that you could help. And now, if we are going to launch this was last year, If we want to launch this in October, we need to practice quickly, And the email was the 26th of September, So they wanted to.
Research funding?
Yes, zero research funding. That's kind of also the issue that I wanted to highlight. They wanted to have basically this in 1 or 2 weeks, And they say, language model, they can do everything, so this is going to be super easy, And yeah, you don't need research funding, but that's also another thing that we asked in our answer, So yeah, this came to me, and at the beginning, actually, I was thinking, okay, with language models, I just put some prompts, and put to analyze, to give me a summary, what people talk. But then I was thinking a bit deeper. I mean, okay, I'm sure that whatever response that the LLM, whatever LLM I put, it's going to look super nice, and it's going to make a lot of sense, it's going to be coherent and so on. But am I sure it's going to reflect, what people are writing, or it's going to be just something that obviously looks nice, and maybe 1 or 2 people have talked about that, but it doesn't reflect everybody, And then I talk a bit more deeply. Okay, maybe I'm not sure, but there is some way that I can test this, so be sure of what kind of limitation can it have, how to evaluate it. It was not easy at all. I don't know if you can have it, Maybe you work in this area, you can have this evaluation, but I didn't know how to design, how to start with. We will take time. And that's what I told them. You give us maybe resources and so on. Maybe it's an interesting research problem. We can work on that. But no, they wanted to have this in a week without spending any money. So yeah, basically I told them that it's not possible, and we told us kind of the issues and so on, But yeah, But still they were skeptical, no? I mean, they see ChatGPT, how they work and so on, no? How this kind of be done, honestly. Yeah. So yeah, this was kind of an issue of how to, yeah, how can you evaluate, no, things that they work or not, especially, you know, and these kind of things with surveys and other surveys, the generation and so on, it's very hard. And then have another example, and this is more from the research that, that we've been working on, that is kind of a simple task, let's say text classification, no? So you have a text, a document, a sentence, it can be, or any document, and you have to cluster into topics, themes, or whatever, no? Different kind of areas, but it's kind of, at least from an NLP perspective, is considered one of the simplest tasks, no? So let's see the large language models, no? How they work, no? And obviously this is supposed to be almost a solved task, no? Let's say. So we compare, it was very simple. We do other things in the paper, no? But one thing we do is compare with large language models in context learning, different prompting techniques, different things, and then other kind of the smaller supervised models, and mostly, I mean, things like small language models, no? Like BERT-like and so on, that we fine tune, and compare, no? Which one will work better. And we evaluate in many different data sets for many different domains and so on, and kind of the conclusion, and in most of the data set, it was kind of very clear that the fine-tuning of smaller models, no, I mean, you use more data, lead to better results than just language models, no, within context learning. And yeah, maybe this is not super surprising, and I think also Scott had a similar experiment, no, using no large language models, and especially large language models, they are very good in the task, no. But yeah, you can have like the smaller models that work better, and in some data set, I mean, the difference, no, is substantial as well. So what does this mean? And it was kind of consistent with binary, multi-class, multi-level, even there was a bigger difference as well. But what does it mean? So you have like smaller models, no, that can work better, no, than large language models. This has some implications, I mean, because obviously, yeah, these are small models are using more data and so on. Well, we were presenting a poster a couple of months ago, no, in college, and we had a lot of people coming to the poster and with very clear opinions on this. So it was very interesting discussion, and that's why also I mentioned here in the presentation. So we have first, let's say that the LLM skepticals, no, or what I call them, no. So they come in here, people from companies or from the research, and say, I've been trying to use like large language models and GPT or Llama for this task, but a simple vector guy was always better. And I thought like crazy, I don't know how to use the language models and so on, no? So yeah, so it was good to see this. And so yeah, you have a few people like doing like that for different tasks, no, and so on, that they say, okay, you have simple classifier, but they told me in a company I can use a large language models and so on, but I don't know how to improve that performance. And then we have the other kind of people, no, like the LLM believers, or as I call them. And you say you can do in the paper, no, also they check the details and they will see the details, no, and so on. But yeah, they say, okay, you can do better prompt engineering, and for sure the large language model will have better performance than what you showed in the paper, no? Or the setting was not fair because small models using more data and so on. And you haven't used the latest models, no, that obviously they were not available when we were doing the paper, but yeah, Llama 3 or GPT-4. But I think that all the comments makes a lot of sense, and I think nobody's right and nobody's wrong. But yeah, this kind of also in my mind shows, no, that kind of different people that have different needs, no, and kind of you have experts, no, like LLMs, and they can do a perfect, no problem engineering from the problem, and they can solve, no, kind of very difficult tasks. But on the other hand, you have people that maybe don't know much about NLP as well, no, so they want something, just use it, no, as it is, no, and sometimes the LLM doesn't give the results that they need, no, because they are not experts, they don't know how to use properly and so on. So yeah, that's kind of the best I want to do, because everybody on the conversation, all the comments make a lot of sense, no, and yeah, I mean, you can do better, no, with the LLMs, but then yeah, you have people that need something, no, you need a task and you need a solution, no. And we need to offer to them, and sometimes the LLM out of the box is not the optimal solution. So yeah, that's kind of a presentation of what I'm going to talk about a case domain, no, where this also happens, no, that is social media that I've been working on quite a bit. First is why I started working on social media, no, why maybe I think that people can work at it still, no, because I think it's a very challenging domain, at least from the early perspective, no, and I work on, no. That's where, for me, it was interesting at the beginning. No, it's something that at least, no. I mean, now we have even better models than when I started working in this area, but still, they have limitations, and before even more, no. So in social media, we have a lot of informal grammar. No, people speak quickly. They switch even languages. There's multimodality, emoji. There are those typos, hashtags that you don't find in other things, and then it's something that is very dynamic, It's constantly, I mean, every day there are a new event, so people talk about that event, and then the next day people talk about different things, And it's hard to have the context there as well, And there are millions of billions, of posts, every day on different platforms and so on. So there are a lot of things that if you use just standard NLP models, I mean, they are going to probably have, they are going to struggle, to compare with, for example, if you work with Wikipedia or news articles that are much better structured and so on, it's much easier. And for me, this started kind of as some side projects, and I was interested in those two aspects, in the research side, because I see challenges that I can work on, and I'm a researcher, obviously, I don't want to have something that is already solved. And also because practice is relevant, and as we see here, there are so many applications in social media that are important, to solve, and you need good NLP tools for that. And also at the beginning, also I like kind of this emoji when I started work, and I have some research papers about emoji as well, so you are interested. And I also was interested in how they interact, with kind of messages, emojis in the same message, and so on. Emojis are they words? Are they kind of a new language, and so on? So yeah, that was quite interesting also for me, and also what attracted me to the field as well. And continue with my story, of how this became from a side project, to something that I work more now more full time, and it's kind of one of my main topics of research nowadays. So this was at the end of 2020, tweetable, but it started as a short paper, basically, where we proposed new language models for social media and released them, and a new evaluation benchmark. And yeah, what it is? Well, first, the language model is something very simple. At that time, we have kind of Roberta, that it was released by Facebook, that it was a general domain, language model, and then we simply, continue training, in social media. So then the model gets specialized, to the domain, and it knows better, to solve a few things, for social media than a general domain model that knows more about other kind of domains, but it's not specialized in social media. So yeah, it was very simple. So there is nothing about research, that novelty, about the research methodology, but simply how to train a new model and continue training and so on, and see that basically helps. And why it helps? So there is an example I put also in different places, just a small example, So for example, you have Tokyo Me, that was, if you put like the normal word title, you eat, right, me, him, good. So very general things, But then you put the model that is especially in social media, you see how people talk, It's fast, awesome, quick, crazy, close, That was close, like a chance and so on. And so you can see, that at least they know a bit more, so they know a bit more how people talk in social media, and they have more information also on some topics as well. Yeah, then also we developed, as I mentioned, it was the language models and a benchmark, And at that time, evaluation, as we talked about, is still an issue. So there was glue, there was super glue, there was kind of other benchmarks as well. Now there are many more, but there was nothing for social media. Especially in social media, it's hard because sometimes it's hard not to share the data as well. And many people propose one model for one task, and then they claim it's better, but then other people propose another model for another task, and they claim it's better, but there's no comparison, in the same grounds, and so on. And that's usually very problematic. So it was quite fragmented in that way, that what works well, what works bad, and so on. So we thought that it was kind of a way, to kind of measure, the improvement in this area. So we basically took like standard tasks in social media, like hate speech detection, irony detection, offensive language identification, sentiment analysis, and we created like some splits and so on, kind of some data set that already were existing. And it's kind of people start using and so on, but kind of this data set now with the new models and so on is, let's say it's kind of easy, for the new models, and also there is the issue, that models also train on this data, so it's hard to evaluate. So this has to be, renewed every time, as well. So especially now, it's an issue more than it was before when we proposed the model. But last year also we kind of expanded these data sets, so what we call now super tweetable. And basically we wanted to have the data we have there, like kind of renew and maybe more general, like kind of more challenging in a way, because especially now with large language models, there are some kind of tasks that we were in tweetable that was almost solved now. So this is kind of 12 diverse tasks. We have some examples here, also name recognition, question generation, question answering, topic classification, twist similarity as well, things like that, kind of different. No? Before it was only classification, and now we have many different kind of tasks, includes generative, regression, classification tasks. And also with temporal splits, that this is something I'm not going to talk about today, but it's something I'm very interested in, that sometimes kind of with this benchmark, we lose how these models are applied in practice, no? Because most of the times, for example, in social media, people want to apply models today or yesterday, no? But not kind of 1 year ago. And it's very different because the language evolves, no? There are new events, as I was mentioning, and the performance drops quite a bit, no? When you're evaluating 1 year or another one. So it's important that these models also get up to date, but not only that, because it's impossible to get constantly up to date, no? But how can they be robust to these kind of changes? And the results is kind of similar to what I showed before, no? Like smaller specialized models with supervision still work better, no? Like kind of model, including GPT models and so on. And yeah, but again, you must say that the comparison is not always apples to apples, no, but it shows, no, that sometimes, for example, if a person wants to use a model for, let's say, sentiment analysis, they are good to go, no, with a small model that is already specialized and they can use easily in the laptop and so on, no? And this is kind of what I'm going to talk about today, also like kind of the practicality of the models. So along with this, and this is something that we do usually, no, we release, no, we release kind of the data sets, we release kind of the models, the language models. But at that time also in Twitter, we released, no, like the models that are fine-tuned for the different tasks. Yeah, we thought it was just for reproducibility and so on, so people can use it and see that the evaluation notes kind of it makes sense, no? But then it started to be the models were downloaded a lot in tiny pace, and we didn't know why. No? So I mean, there was just model for one research experiment. It was a findings paper, a short paper, no, and we just released for that. And people started to use like, yeah, it got to the top of the hiding page, no? So it was downloading more than models and BERT, GPT, and so on, no? So it made no sense to us, no, at least at that time, no? And it was just, we knew it was just a model fine-tuning a data set, and that's it, and we put it there, no? So I mean, why people are using so much, it's kind of, and without any advertisement, right? We had a small lab and so on, no? And we started wondering, you know, why kind of people started to use these kind of models so much, no? Especially the one that was popular was sentiment analysis, but all the kind of offensive language, irony, and so on, they were popular as well, no? But sentiment analysis was the most popular, and it still is. And still is, yeah, that's what I mentioned, it's still, no? I mean, this is from this year, from March, it got like more than 100 million downloads in a month. So, I mean, that is kind of, yeah, what people are using with this, no? And because there are so many models, no? And you can see it, GPT models and models that are much more, no, stronger, no, than these models, no, and so on. So we started to, one, especially at the beginning, no, when we got this, like it was more 2 years ago, something like that. So this make up, well, we are doing something that is very simple, no, from an NLP point of view. I mean, we are just fine-tuning a data set and that's it. We just release that, but we don't do anything like that, anything fancy. So maybe we can do a bit more effort, no, because I mean, people are using a lot, and we're starting to realize, no, what people are using, no, so it's kind of companies, because they want to analyze, no, maybe they launch a new product, no, if they, like, you don't know, or analyze the sentiment, like also people, policies by politicians, no, if people, or journalists, no, they want to understand, no, if people are against or no against some particular issue, and they want to analyze usually a lot of data. So they want something that it works easily, that they can work in the laptop, because sometimes, yeah, it's a kind of non-profit organization, a small lab, or it can be a small company, no, so they don't have resources to learn to launch very big models, no, especially when with a lot of inference that are needed. And then it's very easy to use. For example, the sentiment model tells you only if it's positive, negative, or neutral, no? So it's very easy to understand, and it's very easy to use, and so on. No? So that's where we realize, no? I think what people appreciate here is like the model is, okay, it's decent, no, it's good, no, but especially it's very easy to use in practical application. So yeah, let's try to wrap it up and make it a bit better. Let's try to improve also the model, no? We know it has a lot of flaws and so on. So let's try to make something that, yeah, that we are more also happy to share with so many people. So that's why we created Tweet NLP. That is a project that comes also from academia and industry, so it's a collaboration with many people, and it's more people that is in this slide, that is kind of the initial team, but they kind of which one of this, and then we update some resources and so on. So yeah, basically we wanted to create a platform, no, for NLP specialized in social media, no, so people can use models, no, for stuff like sentiment analysis, speech detection, and something that is easy to use. We wanted people even that they don't have almost programming experience, and especially not NLP experience, that they can use them and understand them, know what is the output, know what they get, and so on. So yeah, we can create like different kind of resources, like a small API tool that is very, again, we were focusing on simplicity that people can use it, or you can just load a model and so on. Then you can do also more fancy things, but I mean, the kind of the target audience is probably not people here, but other people working on different topics, no? Like from many different domains. And yeah, we kind of put a demo there, so you can also test it, and you can see, like, for example, what I did before. I was not making up the example of some, no, but you can get here, you know, what you get, the predictions. And again, the temporal things that I'm very interested in, you can see how, when you have a warner looking forward to watching, no, match game tonight, if you put the model of 2020, it's a day, not something very general, but you put the model of 2021, there was a Squid Game, no, that was the Korean show that was very popular, no, and suddenly, no, it gets to that, no. So that's kind of the issue also to use the models, no, when you are using them in real time, that they are not going to know this information. And then you have also topic classification that, yeah, we created a data set that Scott also mentioned before, that then we have some models going on that you can use them for you classify no topics into sports or business news and so on. Name recognition, no, so traditional NLP task, no, but traditionally it has been very hard to make it work in social media, and still it doesn't work perfectly, no, but at least yeah, it works much better with the newer models. We put also for people that some of the application, no, like how they can use, no. So to track, for example, no, how is the sentiment goes over time. So you can put, for example, a term there, and you can get, no, how the sentiment track over time. And this is kind of the things we put it also a demo for here, no, but people can use it, not using the models, no, and these kind of things, no. So how people, no, start to be positive about one topic or negative and so on. Or yeah, you can see how even some words also change over time. But you have Parasite, no, that it was also the Korean movie, so you can see how it was kind of at some point it was picked. So it was kind of when, yeah, it was when the movie was released, won the Oscar, no, and so on. That people start talking about a lot about that. Or Folklore, that it was also an album by Taylor Swift, if I'm not mistaken, no. So it's a normal goal, but suddenly it was very popular. And why it was very popular, no? So it's because of that. Or even words like Macron, no, the French, no, president. When there was elections, no, more people were talking about him as well, no. So yeah. And just an example about the topics, no, that you can find, no. So you can put something like Argentina, no, and you can see suddenly a lot of, you can see some pics there, no, about the sports, no. And I don't know if you can imagine, it's in 2021 and then at the end of 2022. So that was when it was the World Cup, no, that Argentina won. So you can see that Argentina was just exclusively about as a football team, basically, no. But at other times it's not the same, no. So yeah, you can do a lot of things, no, and with these kind of models and with this demo, but I mean, you can use yourself, no. That for people that work in other domains, it's kind of very useful, no, to have a graph, no, of what people are talking on in social media, no, very quickly, no. And then obviously that you get into the details, there are many issues, and the models are not perfect, and so on. And yeah, that's more or less all that I want to talk today. And I just dropping here another keywords, because this is kind of, since we developed this, I was engaged in many multidisciplinary collaborations, because people using our models. I was also interested in how the people use them, the models, and also help them not to use maybe to get the potential, and then learn, no, also because they are using it, and sometimes they're using it in a way that we are not expecting, no, from the NLP research point of view. There are a lot of things that were surprising to me, no, at that time, no. Well, from the beginning that I mentioned before, no, but I mean, how people use, you know, what they need and so on. And I think it's important because then also we realize, no, that yeah, that there are so many things to do that we can do still, no, that are not solved, because we have PhD students and so on. They're sometimes afraid that LLMs have solved everything, and you need a lot of computing, you need to work something. But I mean, there are so many interesting problems that you can work on. So these are some words also. If you're interested in any of these, yeah, come talk to me too, because yeah, I've been working on these and others as well. So yeah, conclusion, like something that large language models sometimes is not the best solution for our problems, no. I mean, we might think that they are very good, and they are. I mean, they are tools that, I mean, obviously are amazing, and it's impressive to know all the things that they can do, and they can understand, and they can answer, and so on. But when you dig deeper to the problems, I mean, sometimes, no, you have better solutions. And sometimes a specialized language model are a good solution, but that's not the only thing, no. I mean, what you need is language models. I believe that if there is some text component, language model, of course, are going to be part of the solution, no. But then you need to do something on top of that, no, like a specialized language model, or adding some constraints, like in this the first talk as well, no, and things like that. And yeah, to end with a positive note, I think the applications are endless, no? The applications that can have societal impact, no? There are a lot of opportunities for NLP and for research as well, no? That's the point. But sometimes you say, okay, this is kind of applied, no, things, so you apply things as they are. But no, I think there are so many things that we can improve that people can use it that they cannot currently use, and that large language models are not a solution for them. Yeah, maybe I don't know. Yeah, things are doing so quickly that things that I'm talking today is solved in one month or something. But yeah, I don't think so. I think there are so many things that are still need to be done, and now we have the tools to really have impact, in different applications that we 10 years ago, 5 years ago, we didn't expect, that we have the tools to solve this kind of task, So we can be helpful, for kind of important tasks for different kind of domains to help people, in this kind of respect, and to do research, that kind of helps in this aspect. So that's all. Yeah, let's put all the resources here, and thank you very much. I'm happy to talk during the lunch, so now you have any questions.
So because of time limitations, we need to take the question to this and see the lunch time. Yeah, that's the speaker.
Maybe we'll shift I'm curious how much you would be on English as well. I don't know, especially if you kind of throw over maybe English, it might be better. Yeah, it's like actually a lot of special.
Yeah, that's true. And we've been working on kind of the models, but it's hard to. Yeah, that's also one of the issues with scaling up many languages, So, but we've been working on for segment analysis, for topic, and so on.
Great. Okay, great. Yeah, good.
Gonna see.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Okay, so yeah, now is the last presentation of this session. So, hey, sorry. Oh, the better. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, so the speaker of the last presentation, so Tristan Naumann. Sorry about that. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
And then the title of this presentation is Biomedical NLP, real world evidence in the era of generative AI. So let's welcome the speaker.
Awesome, thank you. So I changed the title to NLP for Health, just to shorten it in part. But I will try to keep this relatively quick since I can literally see lunch being set up behind us. So let me really quickly start. I assume maybe because of many of our backgrounds, we're well versed in sort of the NLP side, but maybe not the health side. So let me talk a little bit about why I got interested in healthcare as an application area. So this is a really interesting study that was done a while back that was looking at what was the efficacy of some top 20 drugs, and specifically were the patients receiving these drugs actually experiencing the benefit that was supposed to be the benefit of that drug. And what they found was that 80% of patients were non-responders for the top 20 drugs. And so for me as a patient, this is terrifying. This is like not what my image of medicine was supposed to be. I'm supposed to go into a doctor, be able to get something back and be, sort of fixed afterwards, or be able to manage a chronic condition perhaps. And so in an ideal world, we would really have all of these patients responding. There's a tremendous economic impact of not having all of these patients respond. But I think beyond that also, there's this real concern that we're actually doing harm in clinical practice, right? Because a lot of these patients who are not responding are probably still experiencing side effects of these drugs, many of which are non-trivial. And so what we would really hope for as, part of the sort of clinical side of things is to better understand where this is likely to happen, where it's not likely to happen, and also be able to just sort of use it to improve patient care. And this is a really interesting study, but there's numerous examples of this in medicine. We can go for extremes like the recall of Vioxx, which was found out to be harmful for a number of cardiovascular diseases. There were some really interesting studies in heart stents where people went through and pretended to do a heart stent and then looked at outcomes afterwards and found there's actually no difference for a lot of the patients. So this is like a highly, this is not to say it's not effective. There's a certain class of patients for which it's effective, but probably we're over prescribing it as a sort of solution. And so, like I said, the goal is maybe a real evidence-based version of medicine where we have patients come in, they generate a ton of data, we use that to actually improve, and we build out this sort of continuous learning health system. And this has been a dream for a very long time, way before anything recent in NLP, way before anything recent in machine learning. And I think increasingly recently, real-world evidence actually stands to fulfill this sort of vision, right? The idea is really simple. It's sort of what I just said about the continuous health learning system. There's this tremendous amount of patient data. For anybody who's sort of adjacent to this area, yes, there's lots of concerns about working with patient data and PHI and getting access to some of this data. But if you could actually work with it effectively, it's effectively like this population scale free lunch for building out this continuous learning system. It's also a really important complement to the existing basis of evidence in medicine, which is this randomized control trial. So they sort of are opening up different possibilities in what you can explore with these two things. And so you might be wondering, like, well, where does NLP fit into this whole thing? So I really believe that NLP is actually the future of medicine. And the intuition behind this is that if you think about all the things that are sort of, we know medically are really important. Like we know heart rate is a really important measure of cardiovascular health. We can measure that with really high frequency, really high fidelity. We have great ways of structuring it and transporting it among places. All the other stuff, like everything where a doctor sees you and they're like, you know what, a future version of myself or somebody else in the care chain, or it just seems like it would be important, all just gets dumped into somewhere. And so we see this time and time again, and a lot of the time as we're looking to sort of the frontiers of medicine, they're looking for these new pieces of information that allow them to derive something about a patient that they didn't have in structured data previously. Similarly, as much as I have been telling many of our interns for years that every problem could be an NLP problem, multimodal is actually pretty realistic and pretty important in the context of medicine. I might like to believe that patients only generate text data, but actually they're generating a whole bunch of different data types. And so thinking about how to reconcile a lot of these different modalities in addition to text is probably the sort of real future here. And we're at a really interesting point for health and its relation to AI. And in turn, its relation to NLP. I think, notably, you've probably seen a lot of these, benchmark tasks. The one that comes to mind is something like USMLE, which is this medical licensing exam. So maybe an LLM can do as well as a doctor. We can definitely argue about the importance of a benchmark like that. But what I do think is a really interesting pivot from, if you would ask me, could you do USMLE maybe like 5 years ago? I would have said, yes, if you gave me a team of students and a whole bunch of resources and maybe something like comparable to Allen Institute to try to tackle this exam. And now it's effectively like table stakes for every LLM. They can just sort of do this out of the box. And I think beyond that, the other sort of major shift is one that was alluded to before, which is empowering some of the domain experts to actually explore much more rapidly. So if you think about the normal workflow I might have with an MD, they ask me a question, I go back, we develop a bunch of models, we come back to them with results, we do this dance of trying to explain what precision recall actually mean in the context of the work we were doing. Now they have an opportunity often to just sort of ask some of these questions much more rapidly. And so I think that sort of closing the feedback loop is an incredibly important piece as well. So maybe I'll start with like a motivating example of just looking at the language piece, and then we'll move into sort of some of the multimodal work that our group is doing. So there's a bunch of resources on clinical trials. One of the things that's really interesting about these resources is that they're reasonably structured, and there's a large number of them that are collected by the government in general. And you might look at some of these and say like, well, it's scrolling too fast maybe to read, but you might look at these and say, well, this looks like a whole bunch of different criteria that we might be able to sort of pull apart. And so maybe we can just use an LLM, go through and let's see, could we turn it into something that's easier to match on, specifically something that's like a DNF style notation, logic formula. And it turns out, yeah, we can actually do this much better than I expected to. The work that Cliff and a number of others were leading was really looking at like, could you do this question? I have to admit, I was actually more LLM skeptical going into this project than perhaps anything else, because it hasn't really necessarily seen a lot of this data. So like, why should it be able to do it? Well, it's able to. It's able to do it very well and better than all of the other tools that were developed, for that specific task beforehand. So this is a really interesting finding. It's certainly not, there are a lot of other counterexamples I can provide where it doesn't do as well, and I'll provide some of those soon. But this is a really fascinating thing, and you can imagine on the other side, can we effectively take some of the data about patients and then quickly structure that so we can just match to clinical trials? And so if you think about sort of a patient, they might have tons and tons of different notes of different types written over a lot of different times. This is probably a good point to disclose that no patient information here or anything that appears to be patient information is actually real patient information. But you might imagine, let's look at sort of a standard patient who might be eligible for a clinical trial. Can we structure their records? Can we extract meaningful information from their records in order to match to some of those clinical trials? And we looked at some sort of proof points in TNM, so like looking at the size and the metastases and sort of various aspects of cancer subtyping. And it turns out, yes, we can also do that, in this case with a smaller model to quickly extract that information. And so this is a really interesting, this is sort of a really interesting finding, because all of a sudden you're able to use these LLMs to effectively induce structure on previously unstructured data throughout this patient record. And this is interesting maybe for two reasons. So one of them is it's sort of cool that you can do it. Like I said, I would not have expected this out of the box. The second is this is actually done very pervasively in a lot of hospital systems. So typically it's done by a group of medical abstractors. You can have hundreds of them, for example, for large public health surveillance programs like SEER. You can have, similar things for research endeavors where you basically just have a group of people reading through patient records, pulling out information constantly. And so if you're able to do this, even if it's imperfect, if you're able to do this and accelerate that workflow, it's an incredibly valuable task. And so we use sort of these two findings to develop some tooling to specifically allow those medical abstractors to quickly identify where in the records is this information likely to be found, and then in turn, where in sort of the corresponding literature does it sort of link to, so that they're able to quickly take what was previously like an exhaustive search task through a patient record and turn it more into like a validation task for efficiency. And I think this is actually sort of like maybe a unifying theme across a lot of our group's work, is really looking at some of these tasks that are maybe more operational in nature, but still have high impact. So I'll talk really quickly about multimodal models and some of the work that we're doing here and some of the thoughts that we've had. And then I will very quickly bullet point a few slides on these proof points, but not go into them. We can talk about them during lunch, perhaps, just for time. So like I said, I think one of the things that has been really fascinating to me is that when we look at some of these LLMs, again, we can talk about the utility of some of these tasks, but across a broad array of tasks, they seem to do much better in biomedicine than I would have expected a priori. And this would be enough if it were not, that I sort of maybe misled you all with this picture before by saying like, this is something patients have. They have lots of different types of text. They certainly do. But they also have this vast number of other types of modalities. Maybe they go in for a radiology, they go in for some imaging, they have some pathology done, lots of really interesting things. And all of these modalities are really pushing forward like the forefront and the state of the art of the medical world. So this, could be great, except for multimodal models, there's a lot of room for improvement. So while a lot of like the GPT usage that we were using or other LLMs were doing quite well for text, we see a lot of these cases where, the reference examples on the right, that's maybe like what a a CT might look like, and we ask for a generation of a lung CT, these ones on the left, they're cool, like they're neon, they're really great for like a presentation, but they're not clinically relevant in any way. And so if you handed that to a doctor, they'd say like, what is this thing that we're looking at? Is this like a human? Is this, who knows? And so I think this is, made a little bit worse because as we think about building out like truly multimodal models, and we think about, how many different types of information we might want to use that are emerging in sort of our medical capacity, we run into this issue that's really, when we're doing model training, we have this sort of like combinatorial explosion that's really difficult to maybe combat. But we also have this need for increasingly paired data. And we know that as we look for patients that have more full data, we are both going to find fewer patients, but also that resulting cohort is going to be enriched for certain biases. Because who is likely to have fully paired data or have tons of interactions? It's, as you get older, maybe that's more likely, different types of patient groups. And so this is maybe not the best way that we can actually start thinking about this. And so we look to, sort of what's been done in the past. You induce some sort of like conditional dependencies and things like that. And you just sort of say like, well, what if we tried to sort of hand wave over some of those different complexities and basically just use text as this underlying backbone? And I think there's also a very real argument about is text actually like a meaningful basis for human physiology? Like maybe it's not, maybe we should be looking into some other modality, but it is certainly a very convenient one because we often have a ton of different text pairings within the context of medicine. Like if you think about radiology, there's usually a corresponding radiology report, or same with pathology reports. So you often have this sort of text basis, but then you also have this capacity in some of the LLMs that we had showed before. And so you might think about like, how do we actually realize this? Well, we'll probably need to do this in sort of two stages. One of them, which is arguably maybe the easier stage, is go through and train a whole bunch of different, different models for different modalities, right? So like build out sort of a good radiology, build out a good pathology, build out a bunch of others as well. And then sort of bootstrap these onto some existing LLM. In our case, we're using GPT-4, but you could use, whatever else as well. And then effectively build in some adaptation mechanism. So whether it's sort of like a simple projection into that lane or whatever it ends up being, build in some way of adapting sort of those individual modalities into that sort of underlying backbone. And so, like I said, I'll try to, keep this relatively quick so that we're roughly on time, but I'm going to run through a series of proof points. And what I'll do is I'll probably skip through some of the results in detail just to sort of accelerate it through. So maybe an initial work in this space was really, let's build out something in radiology or more specifically, just broadly biomedical. And so the idea behind this sort of clip style model was, yes, we can adapt existing models to biomedicine. That's been done a lot. There's a lot of work that our group historically had done in sort of like domain specific pre-training, things like PubMed-PERT, which did not have nearly the success of some of the models that were just presented before, but also hit, over 1 million downloads a month, which was unexpected. And the onset may be a little terrifying for us as well. But, I think the idea behind this was really, hey, we actually do have some really rich resources in biomedicine. We have things like, PubMed and PubMed's open access subset. Maybe we can just take all the figure and caption pairs and build out a model that works pretty well because it has a lot of different types of biomedical imaging and things like that in it. And of course, we should acknowledge up front, it is enriched for really unwell patients, like the types of patients that you were going to write a paper about and include imaging results. It's a specific type of case study, right? But maybe there's enough there that we're able to actually leverage that. And it seemed like we're maybe at that boundary with about like 40 million or so image text pairs. And this sort of led to some follow-up work, which has been, really fascinating to see on things like looking at Twitter and sort of radiology and pathology on Twitter, Quilt, Conch, a number of these others looking to what are public sources that we have that can sort of quickly allow us to bootstrap for some of these domains. And then we took that work from Biomed Clip and sort of looked at, like I said, how do we actually adapt this into maybe some like large multimodal model? And so we took, this sort of maybe standard Lava-based recipe of like, you have an image encoder, you have some sort of text decoder. And what we really need now is we have these image text pairs. We need to generate a bunch of conversational data about it. And it turns out GPT is actually very good if you give it a caption as the answer and you say generate however many questions you'd like at building out some of that data set. And so we're able to generate a really large amount of instruction following data, just using GPT-4 to sort of build out this like multimodal synthesis. It's sort of like a late fusion style model. We're able to release this model, which is great. I think one of the other things that our group is very aware of is that a lot of the work in the space is a big community effort. So, beyond if people have questions over lunch, if they're on the fence about working in the healthcare space, also come and talk to me and I will try to convince you to work in it. Just laying it all out. I think, one of the things that's really nice though is trying to release some of these models so that the community overall can work with them directly as well. And so I think this most recent version of LavaMed is actually pretty interesting in part because it's actually only a proof of concept, but still actually outperforming a lot of other models that we've benchmarked against, and only uses a very small fraction of the actual underlying biomed clip data. As I mentioned, though, we might want some of these for a whole bunch of different modalities. So we looked at the same recipe applied to just a subset on radiology data. So rather than like the PubMed data, which maybe has charts and radiology and pathology and like all these other sorts of things, what if we just train down to just radiology? And it turns out it does really well. And this is really quite nice because as I showed before, things like GPT, maybe have some difficulty or more broadly, a lot of these sort of generative models have some difficulty in producing images, maybe working in this sort of multimodal space. And so we're able to pretty quickly lift a Lava-based model up to really pretty state-of-the-art performance. And again, this is actually only I feel like some of these are just sort of the start of some much more exciting work that is coming as well. And so these are a couple of other models in the space. What's also really interesting about this sort of like more modular architecture is that you can start imagining plugging in different types of adapters as well. So you can say like, what if instead of just having this like sort of adapter that was a projection in the previous work, what if we add in some sort of image decoder so that we can do something like counterfactual image generation? And so this is effectively this almost the same thing, but now we're looking at image output, and we can get some pretty interesting initial results at least around counterfactual image generation. And can we just sort of provide some sort of patient image, give it some text, and look at some counterfactual that's relative to that text. Similarly, you can imagine rather than just sort of like standard image decoder like we use there, doing some masking. This is sort of an interesting work that represents maybe like a spiritual synthesis of like something like MedSam and then like a segment everything everywhere all at once style work. But this is a really fascinating thing because it allows people to, much more quickly play with some of these models in sort of natural language. I think that, and to the point before about allowing doctors and sort of non-expert technical folks to work with some of these models, it's really fascinating to see both that they're able to do this and that the accessibility is improved, but also I'm personally really fascinated about like what is some of the telemetry we get from some of those users, like what are the things they actually want to see, as opposed to what for a very long time we have all assumed they want to see based on either what they've told us or what we've assumed, because those two are not always aligned. And maybe as just sort of like a quick last work in this space, and again, for time, I'll skip through a number of the details here, but we work with a number of providers, in this case, Providence Healthcare. They have a very large amount of data. So there's this sort of natural question. I think we often hear about like data siloing and it's so difficult to get data, but a lot of hospital systems actually do have sufficient data to do a lot of this type of work. And so we were working with them on this sort of interesting space of digital pathology, where they had over 170,000 full slide images. And when you tile it out, it sort of comes out to like about, over 1 billion tiles. So maybe we can train like a really large model. And there's some really interesting technical details here, mostly because transformers like just explode when you have a 100K by 100K image, and they don't want it to be resized because there's like these really sort of fine-grained structures and really large macro structures in pathology. So we employed some techniques, dilated tension among them, build out sort of like a tile level representation, slide level representation. But the sort of result is this, again, sort of a model in another modality, rather than sort of the radiology space, that's really able to independently outperform on a whole bunch of tasks related to cancer subtyping. Also a number of tasks related to gene mutation. And also do a number of these sort of zero-shot tasks that I hadn't really seen previously. I think there's pathology relative to radiology is a little bit understudied in this sort of like computational space. Actually, there's huge sort of push just to get people to digitize slides in the first place still, which is, you know, sort of in a different era of its evolution toward digitization. But I think this was a really interesting set of findings. And then one that we're also able to make the model available for. And so I think this is actually fascinating because I think there's often this sort of, mental working model that perhaps we can't release anything that's been trained in various forms of patient data. But this was a really wonderful collaboration with some folks at Providence and University of Washington, among others. And they were able to actually help us to make this available for everyone. So with that, I'll thank the team that I'm part of, the Real World Evidence Group, our many collaborators, and yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, sorry, because that is already really to go on to us. So thanks again.